After my car accident, I decided to feign amnesia to mess with my husband and son. Little did I expect that my son would bring Annie to the hospital and claim they were just paying a visit. My husband's silent approval of his son's actions left me feeling quite down. The reason my son retaliated against me is that I scolded him the day before and made him lose face in front of the housekeeper. So he used my amnesia as an opportunity to punish me. But seeing him being so close to Annie, especially when I remembered that my husband left me for Annie on the night of the accident. Plus, my husband's mother also has a soft spot for Annie. Under these circumstances, I am filled with helplessness and struggle regarding this marriage. A buzzing noise jolted me from my thoughts, a notification that my insurance payout from the accident had finally come in. I thought the accident would be a distant memory over time, but closing my eyes brought everything back as if it had just happened. It was pouring rain that night, and Lucas and I were driving on the highway when he took a call. I could hear the voice on the other end clearly. Mr. Blake, we've got a group of debt collectors causing trouble at the Wynn residence. They're harassing Miss Wynn. Lucas shot a quick glance my way. I knew he wasn't asking for my opinion. He was telling me he intended to go to Annie's. I was silent as he turned onto the road that led us farther from home and closer to the Wynn residence. Just drop me at the next rest area. I'll get a cab, I told him softly. Once I got out, even with an umbrella, I was soaked within seconds. Lucas sped off in his black Bentley, splashing water in my face as he disappeared. That was when I felt it, the rusted out feeling of love, washed clean in the rain. The old taxi I'd hailed started slipping on the slick highway. When the car spun out, my heart lurched, and I instinctively tightened the seatbelt across my chest. My mind blanked, the light pulse hammered in my ears. With a deafening crash, my head slammed against the window. For a brief, stretched out moment, time seemed to slow down, and my life unspooled before me, all of it tied to Lucas. At 10, my parents had stretched their finances to buy a house in New York's wealthiest neighborhood. They'd encouraged me to get close to Lucas, their little prince of the city. I was enchanted by his good looks and followed him around for 7 years. At 17, I realized I was in love with him. Though he despised me, I spent a year pining after him, enduring insults from his social circle as they mocked me for my pathetic crush. I'd hear whispers of the clown girl, echoing wherever I went. At 18, Lucas met Annie. I watched him fall head over heels and later fall into despair when she left. At 21, he'd gotten drunk and pulled me close, kissing me passionately, but he kept murmuring Annie's name between kisses. I should have pushed him away, slapped him even, but my father's business was struggling, and our family needed money, and, well, being with Lucas was something both my parents and I had long wished for, so I let him hold me, enduring each time he'd say her name while he held me. When his grandfather found out, he'd insisted Lucas marry me to protect the family's reputation, and I got my wish. I married Lucas Blake. At 22, I was pregnant. The baby gave me terrible morning sickness, and labor was a nightmare. Memories, painful, knotted memories. When I woke up, I was lying in the hospital, every part of me sore and my head splitting. No. At 27, my son was calling another woman mom, and my husband didn't seem to care. I pretended to be unfazed, but each moment felt like 1,000 tiny cuts, reminding me of the reality I was clinging to. The people I couldn't bear to lose were eagerly waiting for me to leave. Maybe happiness was never meant to be mine. Would you ever laugh out at someone you love? I wanted to ask Lucas and Evan that question, but I already knew the answer from the way they looked at Annie. Lucas had fallen in love with her the moment they met. Evan, too, had taken to her instantly, showing affection he'd never shown for anyone else. People become fixated on their first choice, the thing they fell for at first sight. Evan was more and more like his father each day, from his looks to his habits, even his temperament. They both adored Annie. I never considered Annie the other woman. From the beginning, it was I who had taken what was hers. They say pain comes from chasing the wrong things. This marriage was over. It was time to return Lucas and Evan to Annie. 6. Lucas had prepared the divorce papers the same day Annie came back to town. He'd been wanting this for a while, eager to pursue her once more, just as he'd hoped. I called the family lawyer and arranged to meet at Lucas's office. I agreed to the divorce, I said calmly, meeting Lucas's gaze. He looked a bit startled. The lawyer, Mr. Hepburn, handed each of us a copy of the divorce agreement. I quickly signed my name on the dotted line, my pen making swift, clean strokes across the page. When it was Lucas's turn, he hesitated, his fingers gripping the pen until they turned white. Mr. Hepburn spoke up gently. Mr. Blake, perhaps you'd like to take more time to consider before signing. I knew what Lucas was feeling. Maybe even a pet, after years together, could create some attachment, and here I was, after 16 years, someone who had always followed close behind him. I'll take custody of Evan, he said, his gaze testing me. I nodded. I wanted neither of them. Lucas gave me one last, searching look, look, as if he were trying to find a glimmer of sadness or reluctance in my face. But there was nothing for him to find. With clenched teeth, he pressed the pen down hard, scrawling his name in large, angry letters. Satisfied with the financial division, I gathered my things and left Lucas's office. The room felt emptier in my absence, and Mr. Hepburn shivered slightly, sensing the frosty aura Lucas left in his wake. Mr. Blake, should we release a public statement about your divorce? No need. She's just throwing a tantrum. Lucas's expression relaxed so Lucas's anxiety melted away as he took a sip of coffee. Mr. Hepburn, drenched in sweat, dabbed his forehead with a napkin. Divorce papers signed, assets divided, and yet Lucas thought it was just a phase? After my car accident, I decided to feign amnesia to mess with my husband and son. Who are you? I asked. A glint of amusement flashed in my son's eyes as he brought a woman from outside the hospital room and said, "Ma'am, my parents and I are just here to visit." My husband stood silent beside him, implicitly approving of his son's little game. Part 3, when it was almost time to leave. I thought I would be very sad. After all, it was a place where I had lived for 6 years. But instead, I felt completely relieved. As if I had shed a heavy shackle. I am no longer someone's wife or someone's mother. I don't have to please anyone anymore, and I don't have to be afraid of anyone disliking me. While the two of them were out, I called 3 trucks and spent tens of thousands of dollars to hire 3 Japanese moving companies. I packed up all my luxury bags, clothes, jewelry, and skincare products that belonged to me. I also took my baking supplies, a cabinet of high-end tableware that I carefully selected, several pieces of furniture that I was used to using, and many decorations that I bought. I even packed up some gifts that I had bought for Lucas at a high price. The father and son both didn't like them and they were placed in the farthest corner of the cabinet. Even if I took them away, they wouldn't know. In that case, I might as well sell them secondhand. This way, they can still have some last value. After all, we are divorced. If they see these unlikable things in the future, they will probably feel quite uncomfortable. There were a lot of things to pack up. Fortunately, I hired 3 companies, so there were enough people. In less than 2 hours, everything was packed and loaded onto the trucks. The house suddenly became empty. When Lucas comes back and sees it, he will definitely think that the house has become clean and tidy all of a sudden. He has always disliked having too many things in the house, and now they are all gone. I thoughtfully left plenty of space for the upcoming new mistress. Before walking out of the yard, I took one last look at this villa. I will never come back here again. This is a good thing for me. Lucas was very efficient on his side and quickly divided the property. I used the spare change in my account to buy a 200 square meter luxury apartment that I had been eyeing last month. The previous owner of this house immigrated. It is already decorated in a French romantic style. I fell in love with it at first sight. There is no need for me to decorate it myself and I can move in directly on the same day. I quickly signed a contract and asked the people from the moving company to move my luggage over. I found several organizers early on. In half a day, my things were neatly organized. The money was well spent. I was comfortably lying on the lounge chair in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, looking at the scenery outside. My life can finally start anew. Chris soon came over with large and small bags. After the divorce, the first person I told was Chris. I have been used to this for so many years. No matter what big or small things happen, I will tell Chris. He will unconditionally stand by my side. What are you bringing so many things for? I saw that he was carrying a lot of stuff. The first meal in the new home must be eaten at home. I bought some dishes. As he said this, he neatly put one thing after another into the refrigerator. I bought fruits and milk. Now that the weather is cold, eat them at room temperature. And you're such a little housekeeper. I couldn't help but complain. Suddenly, I saw the box on the ground shake violently. I was startled. Chris, that box is moving. Chris smiled when he heard this. This is a gift for you. Come and open it and take a look. I was a bit hesitant, but then I heard a faint meow. My eyes lit up and I trotted over. I carefully opened the box and it was actually a golden British Shorthair. I squatted on the ground and carefully observed the cat. The cat that Chris chose was very affectionate and rubbed against my calf. My heart melted because Lucas is a neat freak. I never thought I could keep a kitten, and only Chris knows that I like cats. I held the cat and let out a surprised scream. Chris, you are just like a worm in my stomach. I played with it for a while and named it Marshmallow. Chris quickly prepared the meal. Chris picked up a piece of sweet and sour pork ribs and gave it to me. Can you be alone tonight? He was a bit worried about me. Maybe he was afraid that I couldn't let go. After all, I liked Lucas so much before. Don't worry, I was the one who proposed the divorce. I have no feelings for Lucas anymore. After the car accident, my mind suddenly became clear. Isn't it amazing? Chris looked at my relaxed expression and didn't think I was faking it. Only then did he smile in relief. I'm really happy that you can figure it out. Lucas is not worthy of you. Now that you are divorced, do you want to go back to the company? Before I got pregnant, I was helping my dad manage the company. Later, when I got pregnant, Dad gave the company to Chris, who was only 18 and still on summer vacation. The company's shareholders had different opinions, But it turns out that Dad had good judgment. In just 2 months, the company's revenue doubled or tripled. Later, Chris managed the company while going to school. Chris has also successfully become the most promising business rookie. I really want to go back to the company, but I haven't worked for 5 years. Chris put down his chopsticks and looked at me. With your ability, you will get the hang of it quickly. Have you forgotten the shining self in the business world? My heart pounded. I still remember the joy when I signed my first deal in life. I nodded and agreed to go back to the company, but in just 2 days. It was Dad's birthday. I went home with Chris. I told my parents nervously that I was divorced. Dad's face darkened and he raised his hand to hit me. Dad, Chris shouted at him. Mom ran over, stood in front of me and hugged me. She said to Dad in a choked voice, "What are you doing? We have ruined our daughter's first half of life. He is an adult and can make his own choices. Give his life back to him." Suddenly, countless grievances welled up in my heart. I hugged Mom and sobbed. Dad's eyes also turned red and he slapped himself hard. It's Dad's fault. Back then, I clearly knew that Lucas's family was a dangerous place, but I still let you get close to Lucas. I am the one who has no right to blame you. Mom pulled me to the sofa. "Nina, if you want to get divorced, then do it. Mom and Dad have seen everything these years." Mom glanced at me and Chris. "Nina, let Chris move to your place and take care of you. I think it's too much trouble for Chris. Besides, I am such a big person. Do I still need my younger brother to take care of me? I can take care of myself with the food you cook. It's already good if you don't poison yourself." My mom mentioned my cooking skills disapprovingly. I smiled embarrassedly. I love cooking very much and like to study recipes. According to Lucas, it's extremely terrible cooking, but fortunately, Chris likes it, so this hobby has been kept until now. At this moment, Chris looked at me nervously. "Nina, you have never lived alone. Moreover, there are still many things at the company that need to be handed over to you. I think it makes sense. After all, I don't even eat the food I cook myself. I can't always order takeout, and I just returned to the company. There are indeed many things that I need to ask Chris. Oh, right. There is also Marshmallow. Chris also needs to help clean up the litter box." I immediately nodded in agreement. Chris breathed a sigh of relief and Mom also smiled. Except for Chris. Who else treats you like a child? I think what Mom said is wrong. Clearly, Chris is the child in front of me. I really miss the little glutinous rice dumpling who snacked to me every day when I was little. Although I am very busy at work, I haven't been this fulfilled in a long time. A feeling of constantly leveling up makes me full of energy. I worked overtime for several hours before returning home. The lights in the house were still on. Chris was waiting for me to come home. I was used to waiting for Lucas to come home. For the first time, someone was at home cooking and waiting for me to come back. I unconsciously raised the corners of my mouth. When I walked into the living room, I found that Chris had fallen asleep while waiting for me. I tiptoed over with a blanket. As soon as I got close, I was stunned. Chris was lying on the single lounge chair. Clearly, when I lay on it, there was still a lot of space left, but Chris was like lying on a child's lounge chair. His legs were sticking out halfway. Chris has grown up. I didn't think about that aspect at all before. Now looking closely, Chris really has a great figure. I lowered my eyes and my gaze was on his chest muscles. I looked very carefully and didn't know at all that Chris had already opened his eyes and was looking at me. How did his skin become so good? It's fair and delicate. It must feel very good to touch. Maybe it will leave a red mark if you press a little harder. His bathrobe is open very low. There are signs of fitness and his muscles are bulging and white. Just looking at him makes me feel that he must smell good. Biting like this must be very exciting. Maybe he will even cry. As soon as I thought of the picture in my mind, my face flushed instantly. I shook my head frantically, trying to shake the picture out. It must be because I am drunk and my mind is a bit unclear. I just bent down to cover him with a blanket. When I looked up inadvertently, I suddenly bumped into a pair of unfathomable eyes.